Hi, and welcome to this section of the tutor where we're going to continue our work with fractions. This far we've learned about what fractions are, we've learned how to simplify fractions, and I've kind of spent a little bit of time teaching you what a fraction is, okay? And don't forget that fractions are just another kind of number. We talked about that before. Fractions are just numbers when you have something less than one, half of a pie, quarter of a pie, something like that. And because they're numbers, you can add them, you can subtract them, multiply, divide them, and that kind of thing. And so in this section, we're going to learn how to add and subtract fractions. And we're going to do it when you have a common denominator. And I'm going to teach you what a common denominator is here in just a minute. But just don't forget the big picture of what we're doing here. Fractions are just a certain kind of number when you're talking about things less than one. And we're just going to add them, and I'm going to teach you the rules on how to do that now. So let's go ahead and talk about adding and subtracting fractions. Okay? Remember back from the previous section, okay, here's a pie. It's my favorite thing in the world, pie, okay? And we've already talked about the fact that this would be 1/2 of a pie, okay? You already know this, 1/2 of a pie, okay? So you write it like this, one piece out of two possible pieces. So I've only got half the pie, okay? Now let's say over here on another table, I have a separate pie. Separate pie, fresh out of the oven, okay? Now I'm going to also divide that into two pieces, and I'm going to have this piece here I'm going to be talking about, okay? So here I have half of a pie, here I have another half of a pie. Nothing new so far, this is just half of a pie, here's another half of a pie, okay? Now what happens if I try to add these two things together, okay? You can kind of think about it for a minute here. Here's half of a pie, okay? You cut it in half, you got half of a pie. And the other half is in the trash can or something like this. And then you have a totally separate pie you've cut in, your grandma cut it in half for you and threw the other half in the backyard. So I have half of a pie here and a half of a pie here. If I put them together, just forgetting about the math involved, what do you think you're going to have? Well, you're going to have one whole pie, right? Because here's half of a pie, here's another half of a pie. If you put them together, you can see that you could kind of put this inside here and you would have one whole pie. So if you did that, then if you could, kind of like a puzzle, take this piece out and kind of flip it over and put it over here, then what you would have is one whole pie. Okay? Like this. Okay? So what we've done is we've taken a fraction and we've added it to another fraction and we've ended up with a number here. Okay? Now, how can this be? I mean, it makes sense just by looking at the pictures, but how does this added with this equal 1? And that's what I'm going to teach you here, okay? Let's go ahead and write it down. 1/2 plus 1/2, okay? Now, briefly, I want to go ahead and tell you, the number on the top, you already know what it means. It's the number of pieces you have. And the number on the bottom, you also know what it means. It's the total number of pieces in the pie, okay? But this top number has a special name, and it's called a numerator, and this bottom number has a special name, and it's called the denominator, okay? Numerators on the top, denominators on the bottom. You can kind of think of denominators, it just kind of sounds like low. Denominator is kind of down low, okay? Low denominator, okay? So it's down here on the bottom. Just think of it that way. And numerators on the top. The one rule of adding and subtracting fractions that you're going to have to learn, and it's not hard, is this. In order to add any two fractions together, the denominator of the fractions must be the same. They must be equal. So here the denominator is 2. Here the denominator is 2 because here I have my fraction set up where I've got two pieces here and two pieces here, a total number of two pieces in each pie. So 2 and 2. Because that is the same number, I can add these fractions together. If I had a different number in the bottom, then I'd have to do a little bit of work in order to add them, and we're going to cover that in the next section. So for now, because this is a 2 and because this is the same number, we can add these right away. So the question is, how do you add fractions? Well, it's very, very easy. You just put your line, because in the end you're going to have a fraction. Now on the bottom, you just keep the same number. So you don't actually add these two. If this was a 3 and this was a 3, then you would put a 3 here. If this was a 79 and this was a 79, you would just put 79 here. So it's real easy. The answer is going to have the same bottom number. Okay? Now the top number, the numerator, is where the actual addition is. All you do is you take this number plus this number. So 1 plus 1 gives you 2. So What did we do here? We took the top number and we added it together, and the bottom number, we just kept it from before. So now we have 2 over 2. And if you remember back from the last section when we were simplifying fractions, you can simplify this because 2 divided by itself is just going to divide one time. Okay? Fractions, even though I've been talking about them in terms of pi, okay, fractions are just another way of saying division. Okay? Here when I have 1 over 2, really what it means is 1 divided by 2. Okay? But since 2 cannot be divided into 1, okay, because we've already talked about the fact that in order to divide, you have to be dividing into a bigger number, okay? Because 1 cannot be divided into 2 an even number of times, it can't even be divided one time, this number is going to be less than 1, and so you just keep it as a fraction over here. You just keep writing it as a fraction. But over here, when you have 2 over 2, this is like division here. So 2 divided by 2, which is what a fraction really means, you can just do that, and you can make that a 1 there. And if that part doesn't make sense to you, then you can just remember it like this. Here's a fraction. I told you how to simplify fractions is pick a number on the top and the bottom. You can divide each number a whole number of times. So you can divide the top by 2, and you can divide the bottom by 2. And so that would come out to 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom, and that's just going to be 1. Either way you remember it, you can simplify 2 over 2, and that's going to equal 1. So what I'm proving to you here is, by pictures, 1/2 plus 1/2 surely does look like it would equal 1 whole pi. This is how you do it using the math. 1/2 plus 1/2, add the top number, keep the bottom number the same, and then just simplify the answer, and you're going to get 1 pi. Okay? Let's move on and work some other examples, because you're going to get the hang of this by seeing a lot of examples, and I'm going to help you through that. Okay? Adding and subtracting fractions really is not very hard, especially whenever you have the common denominator, which is what this section is. Okay? So the next problem, let's say, again, let's start drawing some pictures. Let's say I divide this pi into 4 pieces, and here's 1 piece, okay? So this is 1/4. 1 piece out of 4 total pieces, okay? And then over here I have another pi, okay, and I'm going to add to that, okay? And I'm going to have another piece out of this pi that I'm interested in. So this is 1/4, another 1/4, a separate 1/4, and I want to add these two together. What is going to happen? Well, just by looking purely at the drawings, okay, what's going to end up happening is, okay, here is the piece from here, okay, and then this one, when I add it into this spot, is going to be the piece over here. Okay, so what I'm going to have is 2 pieces out of 4 total pieces. Okay, 2 pieces out of 4 total pieces. Okay. Now don't forget, you can always simplify fractions, right? Don't forget how to simplify this. You can divide the top by 2, and that's going to give you 1, and you can divide the bottom by 2, and that's going to give you 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So this is 1/2. And doesn't this look a whole lot like 1/2? Because here, if I were to divide the pie like this is half the pie, and this is half the pie. Okay? So, using the math, 1/4 plus 1/4. How did I teach you to do that? You just draw your division, your fraction bar. The bottom number is the same, so I can add these together. And I keep it. I just keep the 4. I don't do anything else. And then on the top, I just add 1 plus 1 gives me 2. Okay? 1 plus 1 gives me 2. And then we've already said here, I can simplify this and make this equal to 1/2. So if I were going to add this fraction together, this is exactly what you would write. This is the answer on the paper. This really does express the correct answer, but it's not fully simplified. So in all of your problems with fractions, you're going to have to get in the habit of simplifying them. Every time you get an answer, go ahead and see if you can simplify it. And we've done a lot of problems like that in the previous section. So go review that if you don't know how to do that. Add the top, keep the bottom. So you can see fractions really, I mean, they're not that hard. As long as the bottom is the same, you just keep the bottom and you add the top. And then you simplify. You simplify here. And the only reason I'm drawing these pictures is to kind of show you what you're doing here. You don't have to draw these pictures for every problem you solve. So you can see that it won't take that long to solve these problems. Okay? What if I had, okay, what if I had 1/4 again? Here's 1/4. Okay, 1/4. And then here's another pie over here. And let's say I'm going to take one piece here, okay, one piece here, and one piece here. So here's 1, 2, 3 pieces out of a possible 4 pieces. Okay? And I want to add these up. What would be the answer in terms of pictures? What would be the answer? Well, here's 3 pieces, and if I add this piece in here, then basically the whole pie is going to be eaten, right? The entire pie is eaten because here's my 3 pieces, here's the 4th piece, so all the pieces are there if I add them together. So it's 4 pieces out of a total of 4 pieces, and 4 divided by itself, 4 divided by 4 is just going to give you 1. Remember, a fraction is just, it's kind of like division, okay? But in these cases, you can't really do the division because you have 3 divided by 4. You can't really do that, so you'd leave it as a fraction. But in this case, 4 divided by 4, you know what that is. So just make it equal to 1. So this makes sense in terms of pictures. Let's go ahead and do it using the math. 1/4 plus 3/4. Okay? How did I teach you how to do that? You keep the bottom. The bottom is the same, so I can go ahead and add these. Okay? Keep the bottom. I don't do any addition on the bottom. But I add the top. 3 plus 1 gives me 4. And 4 divided by 4, we already said, was 1. So without drawing any of this stuff, you could just do this and you would get the right answer. I'm just drawing the pictures to show you why it's the right answer. Okay? Let's go ahead and do one more problem using the pictures, and then after that we're going to drop the pictures and just go ahead and work a bunch of problems to practice. Okay? The next thing I want to talk about in the next graphical problem is that subtraction of fractions is really, really easy, and it's really almost exactly the same as adding fractions. So once you know how to add fractions, subtracting is really simple. So let's go ahead and look at an example of that. What if I had a pie like this, okay, and I divide it into 8 pieces. Okay, so here's 4 pieces, 6 pieces, 8 pieces of that pie. Okay, and what if I take, here's 1 piece, here's 2 pieces, and then here's 3 pieces. 3 pieces of that pie. So 3 pieces out of a total of 8 pieces. So 3/8 is my fraction here. And let's say over here, here's a pie. And again, I'm going to split it up into 8 pieces, like this. And I'm going to go ahead and just shade 1 piece here. What fraction is this? 1 piece out of 8. So 1/8. And let's say instead of adding, I'm going to go ahead and subtract these. So when you think about what you're doing here, you have 3 pieces out of 8, okay? And I'm subtracting 1 piece away. Well, how many pieces do I have left? Let's go ahead and draw it. If I had 3 pieces out of 8, and then I take 1 piece away, I'm only going to have 2 pieces left. So in the end, what I'm going to have in my picture is I'm going to have 2 pieces left. Because I started with 3 pieces out of 8, and I took 1 away. I subtracted this one out, and so I only have 2 left. So what is this fraction? This is 2/8. 2 pieces out of 8. Okay? Now let's go ahead and do this using the math. 3/8 minus 1/8. All you have to do is keep the bottom the same, exactly as before. If the bottom is already the same, keep it the same. Don't do any subtraction. And then you just take 3 minus 1. So you just go ahead and subtract the top, and that's going to give you 2. And that's we already said we should have 2/8. But don't forget, you can simplify this, okay, because this can be simplified. How can you do that? Well, I can divide the top by 2, okay, and I can divide the bottom by 2. That's how I can simplify it. Remember, I can divide the top and the bottom by the same number, and that's how I simplify. 2 divided by 2 is going to give me 1, and 8 divided by 2 is going to give me 4. So that is going to be the answer to this problem, 1/4, fully simplified. Now, look at what we've done here. The answer is 2/8, okay? And we're saying that that is the same thing as 1/4. And you can kind of see that here because this is 2 pieces of the pie. But if you kind of consider this 1 piece, and then this 1 piece, and then this 1 piece, and then this 1 piece over here, then there would be 1 giant piece, 1 giant piece, 1 giant piece, 1 giant piece. That would be 4 giant pieces. And if you count this as 1 piece, that's 1 piece out of 4. So that's why it's 1/4. So this is an example of why 2/8 is the same thing as 1/4. It's expressing the same thing, Okay, there's no difference. So addition and subtraction of fractions are simple. Basically, you can only do it if the bottom number, which we call the denominator, is the same in both of the fractions you're talking about. And the second thing is, you just keep that bottom number and go ahead and add or subtract the top number. So let's go ahead and work some problems without drawing any pictures. What if you had 7/8 minus 2/8? How would you do that? First thing you need to check, is the bottom number the same? Yes, it is. Okay, so I just keep it the same. The top number, I just go ahead and subtract. 7 minus 2 gives me 5. 5/8. The next thing you need to ask is, can I simplify this fraction? No, I can't. There's nothing I can divide the top and the bottom by that's going to make that any simpler. So I'm done. This is the answer. Okay, what if you had 7/8 minus 3/8? First thing you check, is the bottom number the same? Yes, it is. So keep it there. I don't do anything else, just leave it there. And then on the top, 7 minus 3 is going to give you 4. You just subtract the top, you get 4/8. Then the question is there anything you can do to simplify this fraction? Yes, you can, okay? Because I can divide the top by 4 and I can divide the bottom by 4. And that'll make this a lot simpler. 4 divided by 4 is just going to be 1. And 8 divided by 4 is just going to be 2. So what we're saying is 4/8 is the same thing as 1/2. This would be the answer, 1/2. That's the simplest form here. Okay? We're just going to go through some rapid fire problems and get the hang of this. 2/10 minus 1/10. First thing you check, is the bottom number the same? Yes, it is. So I just leave it there. Don't do anything. Okay? And then 2 minus 1, I go ahead and do my subtraction, I get 1/10. And then you ask yourself, can I simplify this any further? No, because there's nothing else I can divide the top and the bottom by that's going to make that any simpler. Okay? So you see, working through the problems here, it really isn't that hard. Fractions just look a little bit different than regular numbers, but once you know the rules, it's really not hard. What if I have a little bit bigger fraction, 5/16 plus 8/16? Okay, what would that equal? First thing you do is you see, is the bottom number the same? And the answer is yes, it is. So I leave it there. I don't do anything different. I just write it down. And then since we're adding, I just take the two numbers on the top and add them together. 8 plus 5 is going to give you 13. You can do that on your fingers. And you can write a 13 up here. And then you need to ask yourself, can I simplify this anymore? No, I can't think of anything I can divide 13 and 16 to make a nice number. So I'm done. This is the answer. Okay? 5/12 plus 6/12. Okay? First thing you do, do I have the same number on the bottom here? Yes, you do. So you just keep it. Don't do anything special. And then on the top, I'm adding, so I just take 5 plus 6, and you can do that on your fingers, and you'll see that that's 11. 5 plus 6 is 11, and so you have 11/12. And is there anything you can simplify that and divide the top and the bottom? No, nothing I can think of, so you're done. That's your answer here, and that was your answer here. Here we have 1/12 plus 3/12. First thing, yet again, is the bottom number the same? Yes, it is, so keep it there. And the top number is 1 plus 3. It's going to give me 4, okay? And then always at the end, you always have to ask yourself, can I simplify this? And I say, yes, you can, because I can divide the top by 4 and the bottom by 4. And that's going to make things simpler. Let's see how. 4 divided by 4 on the top is going to be 1, and 12 divided by 4 on the bottom is going to be 3. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 1/3 is a whole lot simpler than 4/12, so I say we're done. Okay? So really, it just becomes a very mechanical thing. It becomes very much, repetition after a while. I'm going to do 2 more quick problems. What if you have 3/10 minus 1/10? First thing you do is you look at the bottom and you say, well, is the bottom the same? Yes, it is. The top, you say, okay, well, I'm subtracting, so 3 minus 1. That's going to give me 2. And then just like always, you have to look and say, can I simplify this? And I think we can, because we can divide the top by 2 and the bottom by 2. And let's just see if that's going to make things simpler. 2 divided by 2 is just going to be 1. Anything divided by itself is 1. And then 10 divided by 2 is going to be 5. 1/5 is a lot simpler than 2/10, and that's as low as I can go, so that's going to be it. And the last problem in this section I'm going to say is going to be 5/18. 5/18 plus 1/18. Okay? First thing, you just look and see, is the bottom number the same? Yes, it is. So keep it. Don't do anything. And the top number, you just add together. 5 plus 1 gives you 6. And then just like always, we want to see if we can simplify this anymore. And I think we can. 6, we can divide the top and the bottom by 6. And we can divide the bottom by 6. And let's just see if that makes anything better. 6 divided by 6 is 1. And on the bottom, 18 divided by 6 is going to be 3. And I know this because 6 times 3 is 18. So we end up with 1/3. So to summarize, adding and subtracting fractions is not that difficult, especially when the bottom number, which we call the denominator, is the same. And to summarize, in order to add or subtract fractions, the bottom number, the denominator, must be the same between the two fractions. If it's not the same, you can't add them until you do a little bit of work first. We're going to talk about that later, okay? But when they are the same, you just keep the bottom number, don't do anything to it, and add or subtract the top numbers. And then when you get the answer, you just see if you can simplify it like we did here. And we practiced how to simplify fractions already, so that's a skill you already know how to do. And that is how you add and subtract fractions. It's really not that difficult.